Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony, Chairwoman of the Committee of Finance. I am calling to order the regular meeting on Thursday, January 26th at 5:32 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Chairwoman Helen Anthony.
Present.
Vice Chairman Matthew Chadwell.
Present.
Councilman James Taylor.
Here.
Councilor Sue Engelbart.
Here.
Councilor Miguel Sanchez.
Present.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And at this time, we would like to say welcome to Councilman Pedro Esquivel and welcome to Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris. We have Ken Chavarini here in person. We've got Julie Blanco. We have Councilman Oscar Vargas. We have Claire Gerard, and we have our Chief of Staff, Sean Bouchard. So, and thank you to all the guests who are here this evening. So with that, I would like the clerk to read item number 1.
Item number 1, an ordinance establishing a tax exemption agreement for drug court INCs.
Thank you. And who do we have presenting on this first? Okay, Sean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I guess just as a brief introduction, the council is likely aware this is the revenue sharing ordinance between PropCorp and the city. It was introduced in the prior administration. This is the revisiting the ordinance itself. There was a substitution made at the end of the term, so there is a sub B before you tonight. In addition to that sub A that is currently on the record, I believe there is a substitution that I would like to describe in detail, and I'll just run through some of the edits, and then if the committee would like to make that substitution.
Well, I'd like to mark it as an exhibit, if that's all right now. So if we can mark the substitute as exhibit 1. Any motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second. Okay, motion made by Superintendent Ball and Miguel Sanchez.
Sorry, did you make the motion?
The motion was made by Sue Anderbaugh, seconded by Miguel Sanchez. Okay. And I'd also like to recognize we have Councilman Shelley Peterson with us this evening. This is the substitute. Okay.
Oh,
May I ask, are there enough copies for people in the audience?
We have some extra copies.
Well, I think you're still going around.
Yeah, I have one.
All council people have one.
Okay.
And if we wouldn't mind making them available to the few copies we have so that everybody can follow along. And for clarification, may I just, what is attached to the online copy?
What was posted?
Yes.
So what was posted was the substitution sub A, which was done at the end of the term. Until the committee votes on receiving a new substitution, we can only post what is currently as an agenda item. So the revised version, this new substitution, will be available online following the meeting, as you have now received it. But I'm happy to kind of run through in detail tonight all the changes so everyone is clear on what is before the committee.
I appreciate that because I also want to make sure whoever's that I see a lot of attendees. I was hoping we'd have more, but I also want to make sure everyone in the audience who's come today understands exactly what we're doing and where we are. So thank you so much.
Okay, so it is a color-coordinated document that I'll just describe briefly. The blue edits are the sub A that was done at the end of the term. Anything in red is the new language that is before you this evening. In terms of what are these changes, so there's kind of 3 main areas here. I'll start with the master plan. As we know, the court is going to undertake a master plan process to kind of lay out what the next 30-year business plan is for the operation and use of Provport land. In order to better define what the procedure is for that development of the master plan, we're going to be requiring that Provport and the Department of Planning conduct a minimum of 4 community meetings in the impacted communities directly surrounding the port. So that would be wards 10 and 11. We were expecting a minimum of 4. I hope there's more to make sure that they're able to solicit meaningful community feedback on any of the proposed plans for the port, and to make sure that they're able to accommodate some of the requests from the local communities. In addition to the community meetings that will be in the community, we're also going to have a full public hearing before the City Council, so that the Council has an opportunity as well to ask questions and weigh in as necessary regarding any of the proposed master plan documents. So that's kind of the first major change we have before you. I think the second one that I will jump to is going to be around the leases that Provport has with its current and future tenants. What the first major piece in the lease section is going to be is disclosure.
Which page that is? I'm sorry.
I apologize. Of course it's not. It's under Section 8, Annual Progress Report. It's Section 8, and it's the new B. It's the red line section, B on. It's page, it's 4 pages over. So the section B here, entitled leases, there's going to be a requirement for disclosure to the City Council as to all active leases that are currently in effect at the port, so that the city knows who's actually operating in Provport land and what the duration of those lease terms is. And we'll also have an obligation that they continue to update the City Council as they move forward with any new, either new tenants or extensions on existing tenants. Again, in order for the Council to have a full understanding of who's operating in Provport. In addition to simply being aware of what's occurring, we also have an affirmative obligation on Provport to pass certain requirements on to their tenants with any new leases as well as any new lease extensions. There's 4 major components to these leases that I'll run through briefly. The expectation is that we are going to have full compliance with all federal, state, and local environmental laws. That definition of, or that requirement needs to be built into every lease moving forward with Provport. I know Provport's here this evening and they can speak more to their commitment on that front. In addition to requiring full compliance with all environmental regulations on each tenant, there's also going to be a proactive reporting requirement. So in the event there was to be any violation of any state, federal, or local environmental laws, that tenant has an affirmative obligation to notify the city. The city should be very aware of what is occurring at any Provport land, and that's going to be embedded into each lease. The final 2 are real public safety concern issues that we have, making sure that tenants maintain a up-to-date list of all chemicals that they're storing at their location, and that be provided to both PEMA and the Providence Fire Department. We should have a full understanding of what's there, and our public safety officials need to be able to make the correct decision-making around planning in the event that there is any issue that they need to address. And the final component ties into that. Tenants are going to be expected to comply with any requests from the Providence Emergency Management Agency when it comes to participating in local emergency planning as well as training. So again, we want to make sure that FEMA and the police and fire are able to know exactly what's there and how to respond in the event of an emergency. So that's the major changes around the leases. And then the final change I'll just identify is actually on Schedule B. It is the second to last page. And this is around the sustainability funds. So just as a quick overview, the councilors, I believe, are aware, in terms of this revenue sharing, there's 7% of all Provport revenue is going into the general fund. And then there's 2 additional 1% of all revenue go to 2 separate accounts. One is for sustainability, the other is for community benefit. If you recall, the council had made a substitution to make sure that those funds were run through the Board of Parks Commissioners. In discussions, it has made sense that when it comes to the money for sustainability, we have an Office of Sustainability as well as a Sustainability Commission. and it would be best practice for us to allow the Office of Sustainability to administer the 1% that goes for sustainability in consultation with the Sustainability Commission. And I do also just want to identify briefly, I did jump over it, but in the definitions section, the term of sustainability projects is being expanded to include the ability for the Sustainability Office and Sustainability Commission to engage in air quality testing and any environmental remediation. We want to make sure that, you know, when we talk sustainability, in addition to climate, it also includes air quality and any environmental concerns that, you know, the city may feel we want to use that money for. So it's a little bit more flexibility on that front, and hopefully to make the Sustainability Office more dynamic in responding to local concerns. So that's a very quick overview of all the changes here. I do have one item that I would ask if the chair wouldn't mind having Crawford speak to, and it's relative to the prohibition around the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure. As you're aware, we made a substitution to limit any future expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure in Crawford land. Crawford had agreed to that. There is a technical change that they are hoping to have done. It is included here, but I would ask if it's possible if they speak a little bit more around the necessity for it and what the intent of that amendment is.
Okay, I would be happy to do that. And if you wouldn't mind just pausing for a minute and just, I know that they aren't necessarily, would you just please explain how who is going to be spending the sustainability and the community benefits reserve account funds, just in general, so that people can be reminded.
So the sustainability funds, so the 1% of general revenue for sustainability, that money will be spent through the Office of Sustainability in consultation with the Sustainability Commission. There's also 1% for community benefit reserve account, and that will be spent, or administered, I should say, through the Board of Parks Commissioners in consultation with the councilors of Wards 10 and 11, who are the representatives of the impacted communities directly adjacent to the Port of Providence. And so the Board of Parks Commissioners, through their budget, will work with the councilors of Wards 10 and 11 to make sure that that money is spent for the benefit of the local community.
And then just for clarification, and then on an annual basis, $25,000 shall be distributed to Ward 10 for community benefits at the direction of Ward 10 councilperson. This is something that has been existing and continuing, but that is included, that $25,000 is included in the 1%.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So I think what we might do, I know everybody has questions, and I hope they do, but I think I might have Chris Waterston come to the table, and I don't know, just so that we can have you available, we'll have you sworn in,
Okay.
so we can have you available for questions, and also,
Well,
no, I think what we did is we had marked as an exhibit where we haven't accepted it, because I think we're going to discuss it first. I believe that's how we're going to do it. You have that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk. Could you please swear in Mr. Ross?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your full name and your position for the record.
Christopher Waterson, I'm the General Manager of Waterson Terminal Services.
Wonderful. All right, committee members, questions? Yes, Councilor Annabelle.
Thank you, Chairman. I think our Chief of Staff, Sean, is going to request that they talk through that fossil fuel piece.
Oh, I can ask the question. Okay, just as background, so if you look at your definition section, section K. Is that new language?
So just in terms of clarification, there was the substitution made at the end of the term to limit fossil fuel infrastructure. So in the definition section, K in blue is the definition of what fossil fuel infrastructure is. And so that was put in at the direction of the prior council. In terms of the actual limitation on the expansion of what that definition is, if you turn a couple pages over, it is also item K under section 6, item K, that is where there will be no increase in fossil fuel infrastructure. There is the red line that has been put in for the time being, which is essentially except as necessary or appropriate for the continued and enhanced efficiency of port operations. And as I indicated, I think it would be appropriate for PropPort to explain what the intention is around no expansion and why the need for a technical alteration to this prohibition.
Mr. Waterston, would you be willing to speak on that subject?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions tonight. So the purpose of the language, let me step back. The agreement on no expansion of fossil fuel tenants, PropPort and Waterston Terminal Services 100% stands behind. There are 3 current fossil fuel tenants at the port, and the intent of this language would be if there was a need to improve a facility to improve environmental standards of a facility, to improve the safety standards of a facility, that would be permissible, under this ordinance. And we felt that the way the definition of fossil fuel infrastructure was defined in such a way that no equipment, it was very limiting to what we thought we could do to actually enhance the environmental conditions and the safety conditions at the port. So we just wanted to make sure that that was, we were hoping that would be an allowable purpose. Another reason would be through the fueling of vessels at the port. There are advancements in technology that are currently in the marketplace right now on marine fuels, but sometimes there is equipment and specialty items that are required in order to fuel vessels with these new fuels that are still technically fossil fuels, but a vast improvement over the current fuels that are being used to fuel vessels. So that's another example of something that, the enhanced efficiency of port operations is what the intent of that language is.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, Councilor Ingram.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Chris, or Mr. Larson, sorry. I'm still learning all that. When we talked recently, I just want to make sure I understood. You had shared that, you're trying to move away from, for your own operations, fossil fuel, but some of the end uses just don't currently have like a non-fossil or electrified ability. Like you can't plug in
large cargo ships. They just can't. The technology isn't there to run on, say, batteries or another or any renewable energy for that matter. The industry is certainly working towards that. It's just the reality of the current times is not there yet.
Yeah. So the intention is, as those become available, we can see a shift into those.
Absolutely.
It's just the current what you're able to use from.
And one of our hopeful outcomes of the master planning process is a strategy on, say, shore power. So that when vessels actually come to the port, even if when they're under power in the ocean, might need to use fossil fuels, that they might have the ability to plug in when they're here. Again, many of the ships don't have that technology on them to do that, but we would like to be able to support that and be ready for it when it does happen.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt and ask a question. Can you talk to us a little bit about renewals, so lease renewals? So my question is, so say there's I'm going to use, because Univar has been in the press. I would like to talk about that specifically, but when their lease is up for renewal, or any maybe C3, which is another concern down there, possibly the third is, I think we have a third concern. But when their leases come up, are they automatically renewed, or can you talk to us about what considerations you'll be making in renewing those leases?
Sure. So leases do have an element of sort of tenant options to renew. These are generally in 5-year increments, but the totality of a lease, could range anywhere from, say, 10 years to 30 years. And when the end of those options are expired, the lease is 100% open for renegotiation or the possibility of non-renewal. And the reality of our situation, which is a good problem to have, is that there is such demand for port space right now, and a lot of it, or most of it, is relative to the offshore wind industry, that it would be incumbent on PropPort and Waters and Terminal Services to analyze the highest and best use of a property when a lease comes up for renewal. So all that is to say, it might be of higher value to the port to not renew a lease with a fossil fuel tenant in order to bring in a different type of tenant.
Can you talk a little bit about, because I have to say that when I came down to meet at PropPort, I was just very impressed with your overall development of the PropPort for the renewable energy industry. And not only PropPort, but East Providence's positioning them, you know, their space over there for renewable energy. You've talked a lot about being a one-stop shop that makes you very competitive for those projects. Can you just talk a little bit? No, it's not. It's probably something you could talk to us for now, but just share again, because I know you did this during your presentation, but I think it would be good to hear again.
So I think we did talk about it for about an hour.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I was very encouraged and impressed, so I just would like to hear about it.
So we've already had some early success. We have Ørsted as a tenant, who's the worldwide leader in offshore wind development. They're fabricating foundation components at PropPort now. We are also supporting multiple projects with subsea cable installation, the Vineyard Wind project in Massachusetts, as well as several of Ørsted's projects as well. And really it's sort of the combination of the deep water channel, the infrastructure that has existed there for almost 100 years now, has created very hardened, high bearing capacity berths, and these are all very big, large components. And there's also the proximity that we fortunately have to the wind lease areas, which are offshore of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Block Island. So all of those things sort of mixing together makes the Port of Providence at large, to your point, both the Providence and the East Providence side, very attractive to the offshore wind industry. And also the workforce here with Rhode Island building trades, with the longshoremen, you know, a highly skilled, highly trained workforce that's able to deliver on these projects. So we don't have to import the expertise from Europe. So overall, you know, it's a very strong position, and that's why we've been successful in the early days, and why we see, you know, this is a multi-decade opportunity, not just on building the farms, but also maintaining them, which requires a lot of vessel traffic and port use as well. That's my short version.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Questions?
Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Sanchez.
Yeah, I would just like to make a comment that I echoed in terms of we all, for most of us, went to PropPort and had a presentation by Chris, and you can see it in your face, Chris, that you definitely are passionate, excited when talking about renewable energy in that space. So I definitely just want to make a public comment and do appreciate that, and willing to work with the council. There's been times in the past that it's either one way or another way, and you being here, your team, having us out there definitely shows that you're willing to be a good partner. My only comment that kind of came up, I'm kind of questioning, is regarding the fossil fuel infrastructure part of it. I was very pleased to see that little section added in the prior administration, and now kind of, in my opinion, it seems like this language is a little too broad, but I wasn't really sure like how to tighten it, and you actually kind of gave me an idea. If we could include no fossil fuel tenants, like would that kind of satisfy like your concerns, like in that aspect?
I think so, yeah. Obviously the devil's in the details of the language, but I think conceptually, yes, that's something that we'd be able to consider.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your comments too, Councilor.
Just for clarification, which section is that?
So it's K regarding the
Fossil
fossil
fuel infrastructure definition?
Right.
Okay. I think we discussed possibly, you know, amending that in some manner.
Right.
And I'm sorry, your proposed language again, please.
Just including the no fossil fuel tenants in one way or another in that section. So I think that's the greater goal of everyone here in terms of fossil fuels.
Well, I also also will say, as someone who reviewed that, I find this particular definition to be confusing. So I thought what we might do is ask, before the council, should we choose to move forward with this evening? But if we do move forward, I might, ask for a simpler definition, but I would like it to be reviewed by council. And also, Prof board to make sure that it's acceptable, but we may entertain a friendly amendment on board council that may address that issue to have a more understandable, simple definition. If that is acceptable.
That's my goal.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Yes, Councilor Angelou.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And is it okay if I review?
Yeah, yes, just, yep, go right down.
I'll go right down. And the first is just a statement also, like Councilor Sanchez. I just want to express gratitude. I know I testified at the hearing under the last administration asking for more time and more involvement from the community. We have members of the community here, we have Monica, we have Julian, we have a number of other people. They've given input, and I'm really, really grateful for that and the conversations we've had. Our chief of staff, Sean, has spent, so much time trying to figure this out. I'm very grateful for that. And also Chris and his team really working with us on this. And some of the things I just want to really highlight that I see improved that I'm really excited about and supportive of the change to the master plan process that involves more public meetings as well as the city council public hearing. Public hearing includes public comment, which I'm excited about. The sustainability department receiving that, or office receiving that funding in consultation with the sustainability commission, and the ability for them to also expand that definition of what they can use the funding for to include air quality, and not just air quality in Proport, but air quality overall, because we know that Proport isn't the only thing in the port, and so making sure we can be monitoring what's actually happening there and what the impacts are so we can address it appropriately through all the means that we have available to us going forward. I'm also grateful about the lease notification and the reporting in there, and a number of other things. So there's been a lot of improvement on this since the last time this was a publicly available document, and this is that's awesome. Is basically what I'm saying. There's been a lot. That said, I do still have a few questions. And one is, and we asked you about this when we toured, and again, thank you for the transparency and the openness when we came to ask you questions for your whole team. One question that I still had was about reporting of emissions. I know we talked a bit about your own internal inventory of emissions, and that is your tenants, and the potential for you to be reporting on that, and asking your tenants to be requiring your tenants to be reporting that going forward. Can you speak a little bit about that, Mr. Larson, and how we could get there?
Sure, thank you. Appreciate the question. So we spoke some about the Green Marine certification, and that's a Waters and Terminal Services certification. The entire in order to stay certified as a Green Marine terminal, you need to show constant improvement over time in a number of different categories. One of those categories is greenhouse gas emissions, and we are right now. The program works where you're a level 1 through 5, essentially. Level 1 means that you meet the regulations. And then anything above that is an improvement above what is just required. So we are currently at a level 2 right now. Level 3 is a greenhouse gas inventory of our equipment, Waters and Terminal Services, equipment, vehicles, our specific operations. The next step to get to a level 4 would be more of a sort of holistic, facility-wide inventory of tenants as well that we would be looking to get behind. So that's 100% something that we are working towards, and we need to in order to maintain that Green Marine certification. So if you get an email from me and you still see that Green Marine leaf in the bottom of it when you send it, then we're still, we're on the path and working towards those goals.
Awesome. And I think, I can't speak for everyone, I think we'll be excited to work with you on that going forward to make sure that that is part of the progress. The city's been reporting their carbon emissions for our own public properties. Chairwoman Anthony championed ordinance 2 years ago for reporting of Bureau of Building Energy Reporting Ordinance. So that kind of data is so important, and making sure that we have that and can start to really reduce. So excited to work with you on that program. And then the final thing I have is, I think it's final one. is just to put a finer point on what Shirley and Anthony brought up about the grandfathering and safe harboring of the existing leases, and just noting that with the comprehensive plan changes coming up this year, which will cause changes to zoning, I'd love if you could speak a little bit about how that might play into when you're making decisions about future leases. Like, if we've changed the zoning, even if there is the ability for you to kind of, even if you legally can continue some of those leases, how will that play into your decision making? If we've changed like what the goals are for that area in the zoning.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, there's a little bit of.
I might need to defer to our counsel on that. It feels more like a legal question, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily comfortable to answer that question.
We'd be happy to swear him in. I'd like to answer the question.
Sure.
Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and your position.
My name is William G. Brody, and I'm the General Counsel for Proudport, Inc., the nonprofit that owns the port. And we contract with this internal services to operate the port.
Wonderful. Do we have a seat for you? Or
I can give up my
And so just the question, which I think I may have worded in a weird way, was to Mr. Gray to put a fine point on what Chairwoman Anthony had asked earlier about the leases that might be coming up to expire, and that you might otherwise be looking to potentially renew or whatnot. Given that we are updating the comprehensive plan for the city, which will then help impact zoning, how will you take into account the changes that we're making into the comp plan in the decisions about whether or not to renew those leases?
Basically, we would hope that the master plan that's referred to in this document would include issues of potential zoning changes, and we'd operate through that. I can't say specifically what would likely occur, but there is a lease, for example, with a chemical company which expires in 2028, and it expires at that time. And as Chris said before, we have a lot of leeway with respect to whether that would continue or not. Renewals of leases, and some of the leases have renewals out through 2062. And those leases, for example, at the McGinnis cement facility, that was the basis for their spending $40 million in improvements down there. But that's not an environmental concern necessarily. It's just cement.
Yeah, dust. Okay, thank you. And then just the final thing I had was just as a more of a comment than a question, with the comp plan, the changes in the comp plan coming up. I think we all recognize that Proudport is a piece of the port, but really want to make sure we as councilors are thinking about this for the comprehensive plan and what changes we want to be seeing in that area overall to address the concerns that the public has been bringing about all of this. And you guys are better.
May I just address, I know I'm not responding to a question, but may I address a question that was raised before?
Of course.
And that with respect to the non-fossil fuel extension. And we do have to spend some time, Councilman, your suggestion was a very good one, but we can't be as broad as prohibiting all additional leases. And I give one example, and that is if we are able to work with the Rhode Island Energy for National Grid to provide shore power to ships that are there, it may well be that Rhode Island Energy wants a transmission station or a substation or something like that to be on the property so that it can address the ship directly. That's all we're intending to avoid by putting that language in there. Because that would be, Rhode Island Energy might be considered a fossil fuel because they use gas to produce their electricity. I'm just thinking as a lawyer, so I apologize for doing that.
Yes, Councilor Sanchez.
No, I completely see where you're coming from and respect that. It's just like from reading this, like as a person, everyday Providence resident, I just don't know like what's our guarantee though that like you're not gonna put a C3 expansion like. Right now, it's just your words, and I truly honor all of your guys' words, but I think Providence residents just need a tiny bit more protection in terms of.
I don't disagree, and I'm thinking that the art is in the wording, and that's what hopefully we can get to.
Attorney Heeman, would you like to be sworn in?
Yes, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and your position.
Nicholas Heeman, attorney Darrow Everett, Council of Waters Internal Services. Counselor, the original agreement that we were asked to agree to was to prohibit the expansion of tenants. We readily agreed to that. When it got written up as fossil fuel infrastructure. So that raised questions that we just didn't address before. And lost in all of that was the simple thing of non-expanding tenants. So whether it's their existing facility or any future expansion of their footprint in the port, as Mr. Waterson said, the goal is that we don't increase the tenants' footprint, fossil fuel tenant. So we have no issue putting that kind of language in. The flexibility simply is, in C3 being specific, the council banned LPG. So C3 is confined to its footprint. If C3 tried to expand, it would need a use variance to do that because it would be exacerbating a pre-existing non-conforming use. So they can't expand unless they expand into a different business that's not prohibited. So we can work with you on language that accomplishes the original and simple goal of let's not expand the footprint. But, you know, in an example of if we had to swap out a particular pipeline because it broke and the newer model ended up being larger or longer, you'd be expanding the pipeline. We wouldn't be able to do that. And that wasn't, I don't think, anybody's intent that if something had to be replaced or improved, we wouldn't be able to do that. So I think we share the same goal. The intent of the language is not to be confusing or broad, and we can clean all that up before we ultimately act.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heeman. Mr. Brody, now that I have you up there, can you talk a little bit about what's happened with Univar since the news hit the paper? Would you talk about how surprised you were also?
We had no knowledge nor notice of the situation, the investigation that was going on by EPA until it hit the newspaper. That was our first. That was the first time we were informed of what was going on. So we were really surprised. The decision or the consent order, it turns out, was reached by the EPA and Univar on December 22nd of last year. We, and I include the council and the city, we all didn't hear about it until well into January. We have advised the tenant that they are potentially in violation of the lease because the lease requires that they operate in compliance with all EPA regulations. And if, in fact, the tenant was not in compliance, that may well be, and this is a fact question for an appropriate forum, they may well not be in compliance with the lease, which could technically put them into default. That's an area that we've been exploring. We've requested from them a full explanation of the situation, including copies of all their compliance orders and compliance efforts, and the full record of what's going on. That has yet to be delivered to us, but we just wrote them last Friday. That was within days of finding out the situation down there. It's my understanding that they have the position that there were no dangerous activities going on. There was no spillage, no leakage, and that the notice requirements that EPA has that would go out to the city as well as to EPA and other regulatory agencies address spillage and leakage. And their transgressions, if you will, are more in labeling and having sufficient exit doors and matters like that. I'm not comfortable with dismissing it as lightly as that.
Okay. Yes, of course, from the town.
Thank you. Just a couple of you.
Yes, please.
So along those lines with Univar, it's been now a year. Have they met the compliance already in terms of their issues, and that EPA not only issued their violations and fines? Have they reported to you indicating that they have been taken care of?
That's what we've asked them for, and we don't have a compliance report from them. We haven't received a response.
So, anything in terms of are they working on it? Any communications?
We've had communications, but as I said before, their position, it relates to notice issues. It doesn't relate to the status of the violations that EPA found. So we're in the early part of that discussion. One thing I might point out that in the EPA consent order, it does mention that it may take 3 or more years to accomplish some of the changes that the order requires. And I'm assuming that that has to do with installing an emergency exit door on the side of a building that maybe doesn't have a door now, and maybe construction issues. And we want to know exactly what's happening, and we will notify the city exactly what we find out.
Thank you. That document is public, correct, of what their findings were from the EPA and so
Yes.
forth? And also, while visiting the port for it's been a while since I've been there, but a meeting, saw that not only is the port in that area bigger than what we're discussing now, is Univar indicated that they also have facilities there, but not in the port, correct?
They do. They have a warehouse on Terminal Road. It's, if anybody's old enough to know the reference, it's the old McLaughlin Moran warehouse. Used to be Budweiser.
Okay.
Now it's chemicals.
Now it's chemicals.
Now it's chemicals.
So with that said, I think one of the things that comes to mind in seeing Majority Leader here as a former firefighter, and do you maintain any type of communication with the Islands Avenue, I don't know what that station is, the firefighter station there, in a sense for response and along also with the emergency management?
Absolutely. And the Providence Fire, the Providence Emergency Management, and the organization called the Local Emergency Planning Council all receive reports specifically from Univar and among other tenants on what is stored where, so that if they're in the event of an emergency, the first responders would know what is where and how to address something like, say, a fire. And that's also a requirement in this ordinance, but it's actually something that is currently happening.
Because that's important.
Of course it is.
Over the years, and I think for us, this area there is much more than the port, and the community has been activated and very providing a loud voice in terms of the safety there, but also the environmental issue. I mean, I've been hearing it and also been part of it for the past 20, 25 years. So I think that we all need to ensure that we take a good comprehensive plan and discussion around that area, because the safety is a big concern, especially when we have the medical corridor there, the Rutland Hospital that can handle pretty much all of our patients, right? So it behooves us to do that. And over the years, reading the document here, I noticed also that it includes just only with my colleagues, Ward 10, Ward 11, which is the 02905, and pretty much 02907. So, and I think that we all share, and I would be remiss if I don't say anything in terms of the Ward 9, because that is really directly within less than a mile to Adams Avenue. So would you have any objection to including Ward 9 along with Ward 10 and Ward 11 in the discussion here? Is that appropriate for you? Or is that ours under?
That would be our decision.
That would be the decision of the council, and not ours.
So I would ask to see if we can include Ward 9 in that discussion, and we can have that.
I think just to make sure it's proper, are you making a motion?
Not yet, but just should I make it? Are you asking me to make a motion?
Well, I'm thinking the best way, if you're asking for that motion, we can make a motion and have a discussion.
Okay.
If I can just get a clarification quickly, so when you're referencing Ward 9 with 10 and 11, I would assume we're referring to the Schedule B?
Yes.
On the community benefit?
Well, actually,
or sustainability, or I just want to make sure I'm able to identify what we're referencing.
So therefore, I just, seeing that that's another discussion, I'm done with my questions regarding Univar, and also that's for them, if that's the case. And at the appropriate time, I can make a motion so that we can, I could bring out my sections, and that way we can have a discussion if that's possible.
Okay. All right. All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to have Councilwoman Harris, and then it's going to be Councilman Vargas.
Okay. In the redistricting that we just went through, I just now inherit through the redistricting the port. So the way I understand it, Proud Port and the port are two different entities. Like are you two different entities?
Yeah, so Proudport is a part of the larger Port of Providence. Port of Providence is really a Coast Guard designation that is the waterfront of both Providence and East Providence, and includes several private terminals in addition to Proudport.
Because I have the waterfront, and I just, with that area, I can understand why the constituents, because those were constituents of Ward 11, of Ward 10 before. I can understand why the language is the way it is, because with the redistricting, the same constituents who have been complaining and who have been affected and impacted all along and have been bringing this issue forward are the same constituents, but just changing the representative in that area. So I actually didn't understand exactly how Ward 10 all together had this conversation from the very beginning. I don't understand, but I understand why it went all the way down to the waterfront because of the constituents and the neighbors that were there. So, I was just trying to figure out exactly with that. You're saying that they are connected in their own kind of way because in the that would be a part of the master plan as well, right? The port waterfront.
The master plan would be a Proudport master plan, but we would look at potential properties, elsewhere on the waterfront that could be utilized for responsible port growth under the Proudport umbrella and possibly acquired by Proudport and redeveloped. So certainly that's an opportunity.
That makes sense because I would see a master plan being created and the idea of that port itself. And as you can see, as the waterfront with the polluted water, it's a beautiful, beautiful, that's definitely an asset for Providence, and I've always wondered why we never took that really serious, and just having that, that jewel, that piece of land there, and I couldn't figure it out. So it would be good to understand that this is also a part of the parcels and all the part of the master plan as well, for potential use maybe in the future. Are there different landlords? There's different property owners here. And would that be that Proudport would probably be interested in maybe acquiring that land to probably do what you're saying, maybe create something different?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, and that would be a part of the master plan.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I mean, that was confusing in my head. It's like, okay, because Proudport is discussing what some of the things that's happening there, but then we have this other piece of parcel that, nobody's talking about. And it's, yeah. I know it's not as big as Proudport. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm going to do Councilman Vargas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question is, how long is the leases for South Former Scrap Bean or North Former Scrap Bean and Sisters? And still, how long those are those leases?
So the ones that say former?
One is the tenant at the steel company, former metal recycling company.
So I make sure I'm answering
I'm sorry, Councilman Vargas, are you referring to Schedule A?
Yes.
And the list of tenants? Okay, and are you asking specifically with regard to specific tenants?
Yes, specifically, Sisters, New Steel, former metal recycling company, right? You got those in there.
Yes, I don't have the dates off the top of my head for every single one of our tenants. Councilman, I apologize for that, but I can certainly get you the information on Schnitzer Steel. I believe, it's around 10 or so years left, but I can get you specifics. On the one that say former scrap bin, the good news to report there is that those parcels are currently being leased by Ørsted, the offshore wind tenant, so there is no more scrap in that section.
Okay, that's the good news.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to try to clean whatever companies polluting the water, to look for a different source, how to bring the metal into the ships. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're doing. And the next one, if I got a second, it will be $25,000 a year. I would like to see 25 tomorrow, and in 5 years I would like to see 30,000, because inflation goes up. And with $25,000, you're not going to be able to buy nothing in 10 years. So we can change those numbers to go.
Well, may I just point out?
I'm sorry.
May I just point out, Councilman Vargas, that if we increase the $25,000, there will be less available for, so if you think about, there'll be less available for the community benefits, because total, it's 1% of, so if you do that, you're taking from one pot to increase the other. I think,
Yeah, because the lease is going to be increased. Whatever is leasing now for $10,000 a month, they're not going to be paying $10,000 in 20 years. It will be $20,000.
I understand I understand your comments.
And it would be good to increase this amount for the benefit of the community.
All right, may I let Councilman Espinal speak, and he may answer some of your questions.
Right, I think I can answer that. Reference is being made to 1%. 1% of the income coming into Proudport. So as their income increases, we'll be getting more money.
Not
25,000. Well, because you get 1%.
Okay.
Of the entire amount that comes in. So if they're bringing 100,000 today, and then they bring $1 million, it's 1% of that, and it increases automatically. Did I answer?
No, that's right. That's right.
And I do, well, okay, you do have the chief financial officer, so you do.
Wait a minute, this is not a free-for-all. Sean, let me back to you, staff.
By the way, when I speak-
Wait a minute, and we're going to recognize Councilman Espinal to continue.
So it's not a fixed amount, it's a percentage amount of the money coming in. So that's going to vary. And that's what Councilman Vargas didn't understand. So when the only fixed amount is the 25,000, but that's also part of the community benefits, which is a larger part, which is 1% of the income.
Yes, I understand, Councilman, but the 25,000 that you're getting today, you will get this 25,000 in 30 years. 25. It's not an increase in the fixed income. This is a fixed income 25.
But that's also impacted by the rest of the money that's within the community benefits, which goes to the same area.
Yeah.
So that's basically the same.
Right, okay. Councilman Espinal, you had some comments that you wanted to make?
Yes, please. I had some comments, but Councilor Edwards, thank you. Some of the questions that I had, you asked those and they were clearly answered. But I just want to make a comment in regard to the lease part of this document, the proactive report of environmental law violations. Yes, those will be reported to prop courts if there are any violations in the future, and also to the council. But do you know, or do we know of any outstanding violations out there? Any companies that do have violations?
No, other than
what we
saw in the newspaper.
Mr. Brody, go ahead, you may answer.
I'm sorry. No, we're not aware of any other violations by any other tenants. The only one is what was in the newspaper.
It's very concerning for the community to find out through the media that they were exposed to such high risk and that we had no way of knowing.
I totally agree, and that's where we are in disagreement with the tenant as to what notices were required and when. And I do have to say that in the 30 years, the 29 years that we've been down there, and 30 years I think that Univar's been there haven't been any reported violations. And we're not aware of any other safety problems on any of our tenants over the last 29 years.
Is there any measure you could take moving forward that will ensure that can you reach out to your tenants and say, can you disclose if you have any outstanding violations, if there's anything going on currently? Because we must notify the community that it's impacted.
We intend to require that in resolution of the current situation. Yes. In other words, we have been on the defense right now because of our communication with them, and what we'd like to do is to include that in any resolution.
Right. Because I know it's on here, at least. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And I'm shocked. Again, thanks to all the work that you did on this. The many phone calls, the many meetings, and thanks to Jeff and the law department and Proctor for being at the table. What we started out with was completely different from what we have here today. So each day I felt that we moved forward, and I was a step forward protecting our community, especially when my constituents and my community was allowed to have a say in this. I gratefully appreciate that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I'll probably have some more comments, but
Okay. I am going to recognize Councilwoman Peterson.
Thank you very much. I want to piggyback off of something that you said. It was maybe more of a general statement. I want to bring back the conversation of the EPA violation and recognize that that was 4 years ago, approximately, that this was actually done. And when we bring it back to a human perspective, that's a child, a toddler. And as we recognize all of the things that we're talking about, I think it's extremely important, and it is our obligation to make sure that we're paying attention to these things, and doing our due diligence to research and see if there is something that is happening that we're not aware of, because 4 years is not acceptable. And the fact that we had to find out, all of us, and we're all in the in the same boat. Having to find out in the news is actually very concerning. As a parent of a young one that had many, many asthma issues as a baby, it is alarming that 4 years later you have, or this is happening, and then 4 years afterwards you're like, oh my God, what else do I have to worry about? So I really want to make sure that we're reflecting on the human component of this. It is, as I said, our obligation to make sure that we're establishing what needs to happen for our neighborhoods and that we're all working in unison and in collaboration to ensure that the most need, the ones that have the most need are being helped more than anybody else. You know, this in terms of what we're doing to bring money to not only the system and in terms of what we're going to do for the community, this is all wonderful, but the health component of this is extremely, extremely, extremely important, and the ones that cannot speak and sit here and have this engaging conversation are the ones that suffer the most. So I just want to make sure that we're making, we're addressing it, we're putting it in as a recommendation and reminding each other that this is absolutely the most important piece out of all of this.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Councilor. So let me call you Pro Tem.
Thank you very much for that. And that's what it's all about. Because over the years, we've been just concerned with all these health issues throughout the 0295, 0297 zip codes, especially due to the reports. So my question to you, two things. One is the annual reports. Do you have a specific date? Because it's not here, but that you generate or are going to generate. Are you going to put a date on it where we're going to be receiving a report from an annual report? So for example, on the annual progress report in section B, the language, should we, I mean, it just says that in essence that tenants must maintain and provide to the Progress Emergency Management Agency and the Progress Firefighter up to the database of all chemicals stored at the property on an annual basis. Do you have a specific calendar for that in terms of what the annual basis means? Is it when they sign their lease or so forth? And then even reporting to, providing a report to, you know, the city of Providence. When, is there any specific dates that you? And by the way, maybe you don't have it, but if you do have it, please, I would like to see it that it's codified and it's not like, you know, oh, we'll have a report in February and then next year it's in April. So at least everybody is you know, there's a transparency, there's accountability there.
Yes, please.
I mean, just give a brief issue that these reports go to the fire department, the emergency management department on a current basis. I'm not sure what their reporting requirements are, but we can put in specific dates with their advice as to whether we should interrupt their current schedules or hasten them.
It's my understanding that they're generally due, I think, sometime in February every year. So you get through the end of the year, and then there's a reporting requirement. These are things that are happening now, to Mr. Brody's point.
She's the chief of staff.
I do just want to respond briefly on, there's the fire reporting, and then there's the general annual reporting requirement through all the standardized TSAs. I don't believe our internal auditor is here tonight, but I would say that from the internal auditor's office, it's been a big push from Auditor Costa to expand our enforcement around that provision. The office is now taking proactive steps to actually notify all TSA holders to be able to file those on a timely basis to the City Council. So this is standard language for all TSAs, but in terms of the date specific, that would be a standardized process through the auditor's office, and we have a full-time employee dedicated to compliance for all TSA provisions, not just with Rockport, but any TSA holder in the city.
Okay, great, because that's what I was wondering. So thank you very much.
May I add that
Yes,
we
Mr.
do
Brody.
file financial reports on a quarterly basis, which go to the city, the trustee under the bonds, it goes to the member, the ex officio member of the board, which is most recently the planning director, and it goes to the members of the board, one of which is a council nominee and the other which is a mayoral nominee. So everything goes out, and we have an annual audit. Our fiscal year ends June 30th, and our annual audit and the payments to the city under the revenue agreement are made at our annual meeting, which is in September. So you have everything now. I believe that there's discussion about maybe some of the information should be also copied to the council itself, and that's very easy to do.
We would like that very much. Thank you. Further questions? Okay, I have a procedural question for our clerk. If we are entertaining motions to amend, do we do the motion to substitute first and then the motion to amend, or do we?
Motion to substitute and then make the motions to amend.
Okay. So I am going to ask for a motion to substitute what we marked as Exhibit A, Exhibit 1, for the subject. So we're motion. Okay, the motion was made by Councilor Angerbaugh and seconded by Pro Tem. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. Great. Are there any other motions?
All right, so can I have a comment?
Yeah, yes, please.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to Council Pro Tem was making reference in the distribution of the funding to the 10th ward, and we had the 11th ward, Council Harris, as now she shared part of the Port of Providence. So there was a lot of work that went into this and how we arrived at these numbers. I would love to Pro-Temp and Ward 9, 10, and 11 for us to engage in a brief conversation before we making motions in here as to we can discuss as to why we came to these numbers, if at all possible. And going forward, we can always amend on the floor.
May I just thank you very much? May I look at an answer from our Chief of Staff, Bouchard? If we chose to have a friendly amendment, we may have a friendly amendment on the floor, Council, for further clarification of the infrastructure, also infrastructure. Maybe we also have a friendly amendment at that time if we choose to add Word 9 to the list. Can we make that also a friendly amendment?
So I don't foresee any issue. I would just recommend with any amendments that they all be run through the solicitor's office. So I know I'm happy to work with Solicitor Dana and Solicitor Shepardi to make sure they have an opportunity to review any proposed language before we do so.
Okay, so that is a possibility to do that on the floor.
You have every opportunity to do so.
Okay, then are there any motions? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just before you make your motion.
No,
she's not going to.
So, upon the recommendation of Councilor Espinal, I would definitely love to have that conversation, seeing that we invite the districts out in ward and also the health issues and everything else that comes with it. So, definitely.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Councilwoman Harris.
Yeah, I would say that if we're talking about South Providence period, then it would also be Ward 8, because we all South Providence, right? And if we're saying that beyond the port, the representatives of the port, that this should be looked at, I would suggest that we all just talk about it. You know what I'm trying to say? Because I would hate to see this go back and forth. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's what I felt. If we're talking about South Providence, because I understood why I was included, that's what I tried to say, And it was only because of the redistricting. So I took his constituents, at one point, he was handling all that port and his constituents who were driving the force there because of the issues. And I was privileged enough to be able to attend some of those meetings and really found out that they were really on top of this, right? They were really, Councilman Peterson talked about high rate of asthma. I never considered that. And I've lived in Providence. I lived in South Providence for 56 years in the same area, South Providence. Don't want to move. Don't want to move. So I can understand why this is really, really big for us. So if we're going to talk about it, we're going to get it right, we might as well have this holistic conversation. I mean, and we can talk about how we got there, where we going. Absolutely. So if you don't mind expanding even, so we'll say the South Providence period, well, in that whole area, because when we talk about the asthma rate and everything, I'm sure people around in South Providence, it's like me, just move from door to door, around in a circle, and they really didn't move from the area. So I think there's a lot of conversation that can be had.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Harris. I would ask that you might meet with your fellow council people if we think that there needs to be a friendly amendment at the time we at council. Should we pass this tonight, I would appreciate you having a discussion so we're not amending. So we look forward to hearing the result of that discussion. Yeah. Okay. And so we have a motion. Have we finished our discussion? Let me just make sure that no one has any more questions or comments.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the substitution? Is that where I'm going now? Yes.
Approve the ordinance?
To approve the ordinance. Yes, we can.
Would it be approving it just since we know we're going to ask for the change to the fossil fuel?
So
or that should be friendly amendment on Thursday?
Yes. So to be clear, what we're doing this evening is we are going to pass this as written. Okay, should we choose to do that? If we do have one small outstanding issue that we're thinking we might make a friendly amendment on the floor just to simplify the language around fossil fuel infrastructure. And if the result of the conversation amongst the council members results in an additional word, we may add that as a friendly amendment. But I would like to give them the opportunity to have the conversation. So what we're doing right now is we are voting as written to approve or not this substitute ordinance. Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? I have a motion.
So I'll make the motion as
Approve.
as presented and to approve with also the possibility of doing an amendment for the general council meeting.
I think we don't need to do the friendly amendment. All I need is a motion to approve if that is what you would like to do. Do I have a second? Do I have a second on this amendment?
Second.
I assume you forget.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Pro Tem and a second by Councilman Taylor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Any abstentions or are we all set? Okay. Motion to adjourn. Good. I have a motion.